This is the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini, along with my engineer, Rob Barrett. Thanks for joining us tonight. Do you have a kid who hates math? I know, I was one of those. I hate balancing my checkbook. Forget about geometry and fractions. Well, Todd Dowdle knows a thing or two about math haters. It's why he wrote Short Stories for Kids Who Hate Math. Love that title, Todd. And it helps. You've been teaching math for, 10 years?
Yeah, that'd be one of the things. Yeah, just getting the kids, because, when you say bust out a math book or something, it's demotivating. But if they can pull out a story that's funny and it's got the concepts in there, so just kind of developed it over the years. And then one kid actually told me, hey, why don't you make a book? Of course, you laugh at things kids say.
What are the stories about?
The basic math that you learn, geometry and algebra and multiplication, division, all the basic math concepts, but just the concepts become the characters. So the characters in the book are the Pythagorean theorem or the radius and diameter, and so just something that the kids can make a connection to.
Do they have names?
Well, yeah, Algebra is a character, a Geoman, Rounder. So he's all about rounding. I mean, yeah, there's a whole bunch of Captain Metric and Miles Standard. It's all, yeah.
Captain Metric and Miles Standard.
Yes.
I love this. What a great idea this is.
So that's all it is. Just those little math concepts you teach and then put them in a story.
Have your kids responded to this? Are you using the book in your class?
Yeah, every time I introduce a new topic, like we're going to start fractions, yeah, it's just better. It eases them into it, and that way, there's some, they're like, I don't get it. And then there's some, hey, this is funny, and, and they enjoy it. It's just a more enjoyable thing than just saying, okay, let's start fractions.
Yeah.
So it's a segue into it, I suppose, a math lesson is how I'm using it.
Does it actually help them get the concept of what it is, division, multiplication, fractions?
Yes, it helps them get the concept. There's no one thing that's going to just make it click, so it's everything you do in class. Like for fractions, it's going to be we order a pizza, we cut the pizza, talk about numerator and denominator. We read Fraction Jackson in my book. We build fractions, it's a part of the puzzle that comes together to help them make the two finally get it. But yes, it helps. But there's no one thing that's just going to do it for them by itself.
Does your school know you wrote this book?
Yes, they know.
And are they letting you use it in class and supporting you and all that stuff?
Yeah, I've got a class set, and got about 25 of them sitting there in the classroom, and we break it out at the beginning of each concept.
That's great. How do you get other schools to use it?
Well, that's the whole thing, is getting the word out. I mean, advertising, that's been the hard part. So it's been just sending out emails to math and literacy facilitators inside schools. It's really the only way, unless you're going to go door to door, which I'm not going to do. So, see, the problem is if you don't know about it, nothing's going to happen. So, slowly but surely, North and South Carolina right now, we're trying to branch out.
Great, Todd. It's a good idea. It's a great idea. What am I talking about? It's a great idea. Anything to help kids wrap their heads around math and science and all those things that we have to know now, or else we'll die in the forest somewhere. There's so much emphasis. No, there's so much. You got to know math. You got to know science. Well, what if you're a kid who just doesn't get that? It's nice to have a fun way to at least attempt to understand it, So,
yeah.
Speaking of kids, Timothy Wolff is a psychotherapist who saw the need for a book to help kids accept themselves and others for exactly who they are. It's called Scuffed.
My target audience was kids, but also parents, because it is about accepting your child for who they are, and it's about self-acceptance for children. I've been teaching this to adults for a long time in more complicated ways, use different theories to explain, but never really had any books in my history that I've read that was an easy, fun way to explain to children, or even an effective way because of all the psychological terminology. So I thought about it for a long time, and then when I had my own son, I realized that any parent has certain expectations, and it's kind of hard to avoid. So it was kind of therapeutic for me to start it at that time. And it's not the full reason. I've always wanted to do something like this, but it was kind of a perfect time and a perfect storm in order to do that.
Why do you think it's difficult, or do you think it's difficult for parents to just accept their children for who and what they are?
Because I think we have our own projections onto people, and it's easiest to project onto our own children because we see ourselves in them, and we know certain things we wanted for ourselves that we were able to accomplish or maybe not accomplish. And I think the expectation starts almost in utero. At least that was my experience when my wife was pregnant, that we started doing things like decorating his room, and this is what he's going to do, or this is what he's going to like. And it just, I think it's kind of a natural thing to kind of have that hope. And if you're not fully aware of it, you don't understand that this child's not here for you. This child is not born with a job to satisfy you. It's the opposite. You're here for this child. And if you don't have awareness of that, it's easy to fall into that trap. I see a lot of damage caused from that sort of thing, even long after the children are out of the home, into early adulthood or even into late adulthood. They're still in some way, shape, or form trying to please their earliest caretakers. You'd be amazed at how many youngsters I talk with, and I ask them, what is it you want? And more often than not, the answer is, I don't know. And I think that comes from them being fed what they should want. And it starts at home, but nowadays it extends into the television set and into the computer and into their pocket, which is where their cell phones are. And they're fed information about what they want 24 hours a day. And so when you ask a simple question to a 20-something these days, a very simple question. A lot of the folks I see in therapy come when they graduate college. They're done with college and they're completely lost. And I ask one question: what is it you want? And it is amazing. I am astonished at how many times I hear, I don't know. The road was already paved for me. People told me what I should be doing.
How do you boil this down to a children's book?
Well, it's not easy. And, when you look at desire, we talk in this culture about exactly what we want. We never talk in terms of what we desire. And I think that is stripped from us young. So one thing I tried to do is just focus on that one particular point, which is, what is desire? Where does it come from? And how does it get taken from us in the first place? And I always use sports as a metaphor in my office because I think it's such a great metaphor for life. And so I used my love of basketball, and then I used my children for the names, the inspiration, the names. And then I just took that one concept of desire and said to myself, you have to break it down in a way that is very basic, that this is how it gets stripped, this is how it gets changed, and this is what you can do about it. And the reality is, I'm not Dr. Seuss. I just was hoping some parent or some kid someplace would say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Why the title Scuffed?
Because the turning point with the characters is when there is a damage done to the leather on his character's body. And one of the reasons I did that was because in psychotherapy, usually people have to get to a place where they understand that it's not a series of triumphs that makes my life successful. It is when I fall and when I'm down and when something is going horrifically wrong that I examine that, and then I can move forward and make a change. And as kid friendly as I could, I tried to create that scuff or that pain or that turning point. And so last thing that I did was try to figure out what am I going to title this thing, but it just seemed to fit together.
It's not how you fall, it's how you get up.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Timothy, thanks so much. Imagine an Israeli Jew married to a woman who's half Muslim and half Christian. Difficult enough, right? Then imagine one of so many conflicts in the Mideast threatening Israel, and the husband feels compelled to go home and fight. This is the story behind Bridge of Comprehension, written by Albert Mordecai. Complete fiction, but a story that, as you say, Albert, is all too often true.
It's always happening. I know interfaith marriage in Israel and in America and all over the world. But the interfaith marriage between, Jewish Israeli and half Muslim, especially half Christian, it's more problematic. And when the time comes, her father is a Muslim, and he can understand why his son-in-law have to go and fight and may be killing his own cousins. It's about love. It's about hate. It's about understanding. It's about misunderstanding, disagreement, and agreement. It's a touch issue. It's raised every day in our headline, in our homes. This is a religious problem, cultural problem, personal, division. It can be overcome by mutual understanding and tolerance.
You think it can be overcome?
I hope so.
I know. I hope so too, because it's frightening now. It just seems like there's so much hatred.
It's a radical religion. I always tell people around me, I hope I'm wrong, but look like it's going to get worse before it's going to get better.
What's your background, and what made you want to write this book?
I started writing about 20 years ago. I wrote about when it was the Lebanon War in 1982, right? It's more than 20 years ago. I started writing. I wrote about 35 pages, but it was handwriting, not by computer. My English is not that great, so it's hard to bring it up in the way to the writing. So I started writing about that stuff about 23 years ago, and I stopped. My kids I have 4 kids. They get very small, so it was hard for me. I was working. Now I'm semi-retired. It's not semi-retired. I'm still doing things, but not like used to. And 4 years ago, about when the time got you remember the problem with United States and Syria and the chemical weapon and all the stuff. And I got an idea to start writing about all these things. And I involve all these characters in my book. And I start writing, and slowly, I saw a picture of a book. My message is, doesn't matter where we come from and what religions we are. We have to start to try to have a mutual respect to one another. If we're going to have this mutual respect to one another, it's not going to be any war in this world. And I know, I'm not a naive, I know it's not going to happen, but it can get better and get worse. So if me or some other author going to write about that and people are going to read about that, I think that we're going to have a better future. I mean, that's what I feel.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction, for sure. We need to learn to respect each other and accept each other for who we are. We can agree to disagree, but we don't have to kill each other, for God's sake. It's crazy.
Right. You can have disagreement. You can talk about it, but exactly, you don't have to kill somebody. But the problem is the religion. The religion telling that to kill if nobody gonna listen to you, and nobody wanted you to be the religions that they want you to be. So this is the problem. This is very problematic that have to be addressed and talk about it and try to change it.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break. Coming up, a little sci-fi, a little poetry, and a lot of hope for a recovering heroin addict. Don't go anywhere. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Our next author, Joe Santor, lightens up the mood a little bit with Stones from Heaven. Now, my first thought was a sci-fi Star Trek kind of experience, but Joe, you asked to start with what the book is not about.
So it's not about monsters or aliens or some evil empire from a galaxy far, far away. The readers are taken on a journey through their own solar system. It's places they know and have read about, or at least are somewhat familiar with. I started off with a short prologue where we learn that somewhere in the vast regions of space, a massive explosion occurred that has obliterated everything within millions of miles. This event will have cataclysmic consequences later in the book. In fact, the remnants of that explosion become the very core of the story. But the story really begins 12 years earlier in the Shoshone National Forest in western Wyoming, where we find two Native Americans, a grandfather and a grandson, are traveling on their own journey of discovery. It's in this first chapter where we're not only introduced to someone who becomes our hero, but it's where we learn where the book gets its title. So from there, we fast forward about 12 years and find that young boy is now part of an elite team of military communications specialists who are sent to the edge of the solar system to retrieve a high-priority message that's locked inside a faulty transmitter. It is part of a series of communication platforms called the Incessant Line, and it's one of 6 mammoth compods spread across millions of miles of space whose sole purpose is to receive data from these deep space probes launched decades earlier. So, for over a half a century, nothing was ever heard from these probes until now, where a message comes in, but only a part of the message was received before the transmission stopped. But they managed to decode that part, and it decoded as a warning. So, enter the crew of the USS Aurora. They are that elite team of military communication specialists I just mentioned. And, their mission is simple. Find the broken transmitter, free the message, and transmit it back to Earth. But finding which pod holds the message is their first challenge, okay? Murphy's Law takes hold from the moment they get out there. And now, along with the crew, we have a crew of about 15 or 16, but there's a special passenger. He's a civilian engineer employed by the company that built the transmitter. And at this point, it was believed that the downed transmitter happened to be the first one in the line, which is out near Pluto, okay? However, the civilian engineer runs a test that determines that the bad transmitter is actually near Jupiter, which is like 1 billion miles from where they're sitting. So they pull up their oars and they set sail for Jupiter. But this proves no easy task, as Jupiter has the greatest gravitational pull next to the sun. So it's really difficult to stay stationary near that planet.
What's the ultimate goal? What are you trying to accomplish with this book?
This is about a journey of discovery, of survival. But ultimately, it comes down to really a story of courage and self-sacrifice in the face of certain death. But at the end, this one individual saves these guys, and it was something based on old technology. All the other crew, the communication specialists, they all had state-of-the-art technology, right? And so the crew had put their faith in this modern technology, but it failed them. And so all of a sudden, their only hope rests on the blind faith of this young man with a very old idea.
It's so true. Like one day, all of the cell phones and the computers are going to go down, and all of this digital technology that we have. What are we going to do then? You know, sometimes
Roger that.
it just, yeah, right. It just comes down to nuts and bolts and just using good old fashioned tenacity and innovation to get yourself out of something, you know?
And the basic virtues of human nature, and they're all explored in this book. You know, I'm a retired Air Force veteran, and I was part of a very unique team of military communication specialists, not unlike the crew that I have in this story, okay? It's a very diverse crew, both in gender and in ethnicity. And it was a lot like my unit, and we provide a very special service, and that inspired me to write this book. And so I started writing, a couple of years ago, and voila, here we are.
Here we are. Well, good luck, Joe. You got a real involved tale here, which I'm finding, Rob, is so common among these sci-fi guys, man. I don't know how they do it. While we're talking about life experience, Larianne Kristen Swanner wrote Dysfunction, the memoirs of a junkie who no longer exists. Scary title, right, Larianne? Because it's true.
Yeah, everything I wrote about, I experienced it all. My dad was a severe alcoholic, and we used drugs together. We never really had a relationship, and I think he thought that we could bond on that. And then my mom was a drug addict, and she was a gambler. She couldn't really handle it. It was the only thing that gave me excitement, and I always felt like I had to be right on the edge. And
so your parents were doing drugs your whole life?
Well, my dad did. My mom didn't. She got remarried and to a man that had like 5 kids, and she was on nerve medication from the doctor. But once like we all got to be on the brink of like puberty, she just went crazy, started going to bingo, and then found other drugs. And then my stepdad was smoking weed with us while she was going to bingo every night, and he would bring moonshine and fill off the back of trucks home. And
how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have one full-blooded sister from my parents, and then my mom had 2 kids before she married my dad, and they're both drug addicts, and one of them has been to prison and everything like that. And then my stepdad has 4 kids that were in the home, and then 3 or 4 other ones that were out of the home. And then my dad got remarried before he died, and she has 4 kids. So, I mean, altogether, there's like probably 17. I don't know exactly.
Wow. Oh, my God. What finally snapped you out of it?
Honestly, the drugs weren't doing anything anymore. My last hurrah, I would say. Me and my husband got in a huge fight, and he's always been there trying to pull me out. My husband's an amazing man. And I took a bunch of money and went and got a bunch of drugs, and I sat there, and it didn't matter how much I did. I still felt completely empty, and nothing was sufficing. And I knew if I didn't go get help, I was going to die. And I wasn't ready to go. I wanted to put my mark on the world. So
where are you now?
I still live in Tennessee, a little far out in the boonies. I try to stay out of Knoxville as much as I can because me in the city doesn't really do too good. But I started another book. I'm struggling with it. I think because I said so much in the first. I don't know, but...
So you're writing about your experiences.
Well, the first one was a true story, and I thought that I've heard so much just from so many people. I thought that I would write fiction now and put all the crazy things I've heard, not just from stuff I left out, but other people. I thought I would put that into something, and I figured people would eat it up.
Oh, okay. So that's what you're trying to do now?
Yeah.
Is that what you basically do now, is write?
Yeah, I'm writing. I'm just a housewife. I like I said, I try not to go out too much because it's just not good for me, I think. We all know our strengths, and we all know what we can't handle, and I just think I have that fear.
How long have you been clean?
About 2 years. Yeah, I got out of rehab, and I messed up once right after rehab, and then I realized this isn't what I want, and so I've been clean ever since. And I'm happy that the life that I used to have was insane, and I thought I could never be happy just being at home and living the way I am, but actually it's what I look for now, you know, like I collect coffee mugs and I just sit at home and write.
You know, it'd be nice to get this book in the hands of people that could really use it, you know, that could really learn from it, that could see, you know, there is a way out, that, you know, you don't have to die a drug addict, you know?
Right. That's why I wrote it, you know, like part of me, of course, is like, well, I could write a book and, you know, make a living from it. But the other part of me was just, I just want, if one person reads this and it makes the light bulb go off on their head, you know, then it did some good. And that's all I'm hoping for.
All right, Larianne, best of luck to you with your book and your recovery. Finally, Gerald Kinch has written poetry all of his life, writing poems for birthdays and anniversaries. And finally, some of his family members said, Gerald, write a book. And so he did. It's called Poetry's Porthole. What inspires you, Gerald?
Just my love of writing. And, you know, thinking about my grandfather, who I didn't have male figures in my life, and he was the main male figure. He died when I was 14 years old, so I never really had a male figure other than him that was steady in my life, and I drew. To this day, I draw on him. My wife tells me that I talk about him every day, And my wife, she's a good source of inspiration. Current events, interesting people I meet, travel. We like to travel, so some of my poems about my travels and personal experiences,
Do you ever read your poetry anywhere?
I have considered that. I haven't done it yet, but I have considered it. I think I might try that down the road. I happen to be sharing some of my work with the people at my allergist's office, and the nurse told me, we have another poet in here, and she just had a book published. And I eventually met the woman, and she told me about Page Publishing, and she gave Page Publishing a ravishing review. She said, everything they told me came to pass, and I think you should consider them because I was only I don't think I was half through my book at the time, And I said, I'll keep that in mind. So, and just like she said, Page Publishing gave me the outline of what it would be like, and everything has come to fruition.
You gonna keep writing?
Yes, I am. I didn't stop writing. I finished the Poetry's Porthole while we were on vacation. We went to South America in February and March, and I finished it while we were on that cruise. And I still had more stuff coming out of me, so I kept writing, and I'm about 40% through a second book.
Jeez, good for you. Good for you, Gerald. What's your greatest hope for this?
I've actually achieved the greatest hope. Just seeing my work in print and available to everyone, that's good enough for me,
Good. You're doing it for the love.
Because I told my wife, everything that happened after the printing of the book is gravy. I said, because just seeing this book in print is the end game for me.
All right, Gerald, find an open mic night. That might be fun for you. And that is all the time we have for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Come back next week for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club right here on 710 WOR. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Rob Barrett is my excellent engineer. Have a great weekend.